Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. Let me just bring everybody onto stage. Good morning and good afternoon, Andy, Matthew, and Richard.
Hi, Darren.
Hi, good afternoon. Yeah, you too. I think we're just waiting for a few people to join us, so we'll give it a little bit longer as we see people filtering.
Yeah, perfect. Well, look, great that everybody's coming in. Quick test of the chat function. Why don't you say hello to everybody? The audience chat is available. I think Darren's already put a test message in there, so it'd be good if you can say hello. You can tell a joke if you like, or you can tell me what the weather's like, or just say hi. Just have a go with that. We'll get started in about 30 seconds to a minute properly, but just let us know you're here.
Hi, Chris, Caroline, Bennett, Bob, Jeremy.
Brilliant.
Great. Thanks. Thumbs up.
Raining. I don't know where you are, Jonathan, but it's not bad here. Harrogate's always good, Peter. Nothing wrong with that. Get into Betty's.
Absolutely. I think just dropping it. So some people have experienced sound issues in the past. I am just dropping a quick note into the chat. So if you are experiencing any sound issues whatsoever and are struggling to hear, if you hover over the presentation in the center screen, you should see a speaker icon, and that will allow you to adjust the volume. So hopefully that helps.
That's not bad, Peter. If you're going to Betty straight after today, you've got my jealousy.
Excellent. Right, Andy, I think we're good to go. Yeah, we're good to go.
Excellent. Well, look, welcome formally to today's session. There was an awful lot of interest around forecasting tools when we did the recent survey and, of course, the CFO chat session that we had at the end of last year. A lot of excitement, a lot of comments. And I see loads of things on Viva and Fathom just pop up a lot. Basically, around contextually, there were a lot of comments about people using Excel, obviously, but there was a sort of lurking feeling that maybe we should be using more user-friendly, dynamic software in the mix. And I think the underlying reasons could be quite interesting. And there's probably a bit of a parallel with the dominance of Xero in our client base that you saw in that recent survey. And how Xero shoved Sage off the stage completely. And the reasons would include its ease of use. And I think I posed the question on the email, but how many CEOs and MDs are now playing with Xero when they couldn't fathom Sage at all and you just left you to it? And that brings a different type of challenge and interest, really, in terms of how we interact with our client base. Now, that might also be true with forecasting and projection software. Maybe our client base does want to get a bit more involved. Maybe they want to see something that actually looks good and different to Excel. Maybe we're a bit old hat using Excel. Who knows? That's really what today's about. And I'm going to keep quiet for just about the whole session, apart from popping up at the end to great relief. And I'm going to hand over to Darren.
Thanks, Andy. That's quite an introduction. What I can say is, as an ex-Xero myself, I've seen that transition from the desktop world to the cloud. I worked for Xero for a number of years in the UK and saw that firsthand. We saw how accountants, CFOs were really switching on to that, what it meant for them in terms of being able to serve those clients, the speed in which data is now available and pretty ubiquitous for us all. So I think that's really important. Today, Andy came to us and said, hey, we're getting a lot of interest in Fathom through the community, and one of the things that it may be useful for us to do is just have a little bit of an overview of Fathom, but not just from me. And I think I can sit here as the GM of Fathom in the UK and wax lyrical about that for you, but I also thought it would be useful to introduce people like Richard and Matthew as your fellow CFOs who've used the product with their clients. It's not just me saying, hey, this is a great tool, but ultimately, how can we help you deliver a great service to your clients effectively and really do that. And when we look at, this, and I'll bring Matthew and Richard into the chat shortly, but when we look at, ultimately how we're working through this today, I believe passionately that we're storytellers for clients. It's about bringing numbers to life. It's about weaving real-time stories together around that client's business health, for projecting and forecasting a trajectory for them, for outcomes that they want. And I saw this myself when I was in practice. I had people wanting to do the simple things in life that we would look at in terms of getting their children into the right school. So they want a mortgage to buy a house in the right area, or to buy a particular car, or to buy a family holiday, whatever those goals were, as to how we could then build a service around that and help them on that journey towards those goals. So I passionately believe that accountants and CFOs are storytellers for that. But during my journey, I think the one thing that really stood out to me was clarity. How do we give a business owner clarity in understanding the numbers, the outcomes that are available to them? We're surrounded by data, absolutely surrounded by data. Every product is producing data points for us. It's a raft of filtering through that, cutting through the noise and delivering it. So I'd love to share a poll with you, and I want to sort of ask around that poll. What are your views in terms of what's the biggest issue for you right now as the CFO? Is it getting to clarity quickly for your clients? Is it time it takes to produce meaningful management reports and consolidations? Or is it budgeting, forecasting, and scenario planning? What's your biggest issue right now? Well, that's either one person's voted out of all of us, and or everyone's clicked the button at the same time. So I don't know which at this point in time. So I'll give you a few, but certainly the votes that we've seen are probably coming through highly in favor of budgeting, forecasting, and scenario planning. I'm glad you said that, because it means the chat I'm about to have with Matthew and Richard is going to go much better than I thought. If it wasn't any of those, it would be interesting. So I'll just give you a few more seconds on that. Forecasting is still leading the way. Any takers? I'll just give it a few more seconds, 10 seconds, and then we'll close the poll. I'm going to ask Richard, Matthew, Andy, are you surprised by any of that? Those results?
I'm having difficulty actually seeing the results, if I'm honest, Darren. So you might have to sort of just play them out to me.
That's right. So we've got so forecasting and budgeting is currently on 63%. If I close that poll, we've got time it takes to produce reports 20%, and getting to clarity quickly for your clients at 16%.
I don't think I've got any surprise with that, Darren, really, because our positioning in the marketplace, really one of our big emphases is not, we keep an eye on the day-to-day reporting, obviously, and make sure that works, and delegate and train and mentor, but really we're really about looking forward. And if we haven't got the right tools to look ahead and to forecast and scenario plan, we're sort of going to be a bit, in thin air with that particular objective. So the fact that that's come as an issue, and the biggest challenge, is unsurprising, and we do need some great solutions in that area, really, to fit with the role we position for ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's I would agree with Andy. I think that absolutely, I think it just depends on your client's situation. You can walk into certain scenarios where even the most basic of things are not in place. So, so whilst I think, the weighting towards the forward-looking view it feels right, and absolutely the other elements are very relevant as well.
Yeah. I do feel at the minute that the client I have that uses Fathom at the minute sells a lot of goods into America, and so at a wave of the pen, Trump can change everything very quickly at the minute. So scenario planning is doing overdrive at the minute as to what he may do next, and how we're going to react to that.
No, very true. I think that's very topical. I think that's the one thing that CFOs are very good at, is looking at the real world and what the events that are happening like that, and using that with their clients. And I think this is just underpinning what we're seeing every single day with people coming to us with those problems within their business, within their client's business, and we're all around, producing really high impactful management reports, forecasts and budgets. For those of you that don't know a lot about Fathom, we've been around since 2012. We've grown up in the cloud ecosystems, and we're very much a cloud first product and company. Everything we do has really been designed around that way. We are headquartered in Brisbane, Australia. Xero was a product that came out of New Zealand. There was a lot of products that have come out of that part of the world over the last 10 years or so. We were one of them. We now have offices in the US, the UK, and the Philippines. We're part now of the Access Group, which is the largest independent software company in the UK. We're trusted by more than 90,000 now, actually, users on a monthly basis. So we've been growing. And we're partnering with leading firms and CFOs to deliver this. How does Fathom work? I noticed in some of the questions that were coming through prior to today that a lot of you were saying, how does it integrate with tools like Xero and others? We use the APIs that Xero and QuickBooks and others provide. Sage 50 doesn't provide an API, but we can bring data in from Sage 50 using the export of the chart of accounts and the trial balance. So you can put that data in as well. And it can be multiple companies, multi-currency, multiple companies that you can use within Fathom as well. So APIs have been a great feature that has come out in the last 10 years as well, that allow us to really synchronize that data together and pull it into one place. So it means there's less data overload for you and your clients when they're working with that. And essentially within Fathom, there are sort of 6 core areas. The first one is financial analysis, and that allows us to look at information on the fly without even producing a report. We don't have to go in and produce a report. We can just dive straight in, look at our financials, and we can do a very quick P&L balance sheet, monthly, quarterly, or annually, just by diving into Fathom and pulling those numbers out. We can do a deeper dive analysis on things like KPIs, and we'll share a little bit of this with you. I'm not going to cover the whole breadth and depth of Fathom in an hour's webinar today. There's a lot of features within Fathom. We'll certainly try and give you the whistle-stop tour of it today. We have obviously the ability to allow you to create KPIs within Fathom, and they can be non-financial KPIs, they can be formulas that are driven. It's really what you need to measure within your client's business. And we can also benchmark against that as well. So if you have a portfolio of clients that you're working with, you may specialize in a vertical niche. You can use the benchmarking feature in that. And again, that's just another way that you can add domain experience value to Fathom and ultimately to the clients that you're working with. We do forecasting, and we'll certainly focus a lot on that today with the live demo aspect of it, and show you how simple that can be to create. And also we do consolidations, and that's really what Fathom was built for, was to do consolidations. That's a lot of what we do. We have a lot of clients who are doing that, so we'll certainly take a look at that. But really, one of the things that we've mentioned at the top of the hour was getting to clarity quickly. And Richard, I'd really love for you to come in here, because you had you were telling me a little bit about the way that you're working with your clients and how you're using that and getting some clarity. So would you mind sharing some of that with your peers?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the first thing I'd say is I'm pretty new to Fathom. I only started using it about 3 or 4 months ago, so I'm certainly one of those people are still finding their way with it. Before that, I have to admit I've been an Excel person for the last sort of 25, 30 years. I was like the go-to person in the business when I used Excel 97. So, I've got a long history with that software. So it's been quite a big step to sort of move across to Fathom. I'm currently using it with a couple of clients, both really for reporting and KPI purposes, and one of them for consolidation as well. The 2 clients, they're both in professional services, and I think the needs are quite similar in some respects. When it comes to the basic reporting, I think just being able to provide simplified management information for the senior teams is absolutely fundamental. And rather than getting big, ugly P&Ls in lots of detail, just nice and simple P&Ls by business unit, by people who are accountable for those business units, with a nice view of trends, month, quarter versus budget, prior year, all the basic stuff really. Along with some quite focused KPIs as well. So everything from fee income, gross margin percentage, WIP, accounts receivable days, all the things we want them to be accountable for. So it's just been very useful for what I'd say, just the basic reporting needs of that particular client. I think that the second client is a little bit different. Now. It's a small business. It's only about £2 million turnover, but it's got 4 entities, and they recently merged. There's 4 separate businesses that have come together through sort of acquisition. I only stepped into with them in sort of late December, really, and what I walked into was they're using both QuickBooks and Xero. And what I used Fathom for was just to consolidate those 4 businesses. What amazed me was how quickly I could do it. Literally within a couple of hours, I had those 4 businesses in Fathom, and I was looking at the financial performance of those entities. So that really switched me on. What I've also been able to use it for in this particular example is just reviewing the chart of accounts, which are all very different for those 4 entities because they've come from obviously different ownership structures. But ultimately now I can summarise that by nominal, by account, using subcategories. And very quickly I'll be able to direct the accountants around what the future chart of accounts needs to look like, and really work with them to get to that end goal. So it's a simplified and with clear definitions of what those chart of accounts need to start looking like. So already I've just found it very quick and very easy to use, to be honest. So that's my kind of early experience, Darren.
What's the client reaction been?
I mean, I think they like the format. One of the clients particularly, he's really struggled with the principle of getting accountability into his senior team. So what he's liked is the ability to get the simplicity of the reporting, and it's that financial analysis and the P&L basics really, but getting that in a nice visual format as well. So you've got people who like things in charts and graphs and all the rest of it, as well as the traditional formats we're used to. So I think that they've really bought into that. I think they've quietly been impressed how quickly I've been able to get to grips with things, which I think is a real benefit when you walk into a new client, being able to quickly play back things to them in a way that they've not seen before. I think has really helped, and also getting on the front foot with the accountants as well. So being able to give them clear direction around what the future needs to look like in that second example. So they're the things that jump out.
Awesome, thank you. One of the things that I think when we look at this as well is it's not just about getting to clarity. It's also kind of then saying, okay, how we deep dive, and you touched on this as well when you were talking about the group and looking at the divisions, looking at the categories and how that does that. Matthew, I'd love you to bring you in on this point before we do a deep dive around your experience of budgeting and within Fathom as well with your clients.
Client, and we've set up a US subsidiary. So we've got the US company and the UK company. The client he owns the business as well, so he likes to have the information as quick as possible, often quicker than he supplied all the invoices and expenses and everything to the bookkeeper. So it can be tricky, and I was finding that trying to consolidate 2 sets of accounts was time consuming, especially when they had to be done a few times over. But now with Fathom, it can just consolidate the accounts in a few minutes, and it just speeds up the process so much. And if we want more accounts, or if the accounts have been updated or anything else happens, I don't have to sit there and do a manual forecast. a manual consolidation. It's just the information is just there. It's so much quicker and easier. Has Darren fallen off the stage, or is he still about, or have I fallen off the stage?
I'm back on stage. Sorry, I took myself off stage while you were talking.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I was just saying it's one of those things where I agree. It's the speed in which you can produce those consolidations, and you know, what we even see now is once people have set the report templates up and they have the data flowing through, it just makes things so much easier. And if something does change, we can go in and reflect that quite easily. And then if we need to dive into a forecast or a budget, we can very quickly do that as well. And I think that's the key thing. Let's dive into, Richard and Matthew, thank you so much for that. Let's dive into a little bit of a live demo. What I'll do is I'll share my screen with you. So first time I've shared my full screen, but hopefully you can see that. Can someone give me a yes? You can see it. Someone's going to have to speak.
I can see it fine.
Awesome, thank you. I'm literally looking at my. So again, I think there was a question that came through whilst we were talking about integrations. I think one was, how do you integrate with Datev in Germany? There is no direct integration with Datev. However, if it's not Xero, let's actually dive in. So I'll show you how we connect. So to add a company to Fathom, we simply click on here, click on Add Company, and you can see the data sources that we can automatically integrate to: QuickBooks, Xero, MYOB if you're in Australia and APAC, Sage Business Cloud, and Sage 50 will be done here, and any other system including Datev and other mid-market products such as NetSuite, SAP, others you will integrate through Excel. You can import data from there should you wish to do so. Once you bring them in, you're essentially looking at a client dashboard. Now again, Richard may have this for the consolidated, you know, the companies he's working through in a group, and as would Matthew for his consolidation. I will see each individual company listed here in their own right, but if I'm doing a consolidation, again, you can see I've got my consolidation here, and the way we do that is we add each company individually, then we create a consolidated group, give that group a name, and then we can add in those companies that we wish to apply. Once you go into that and the settings, that's where we can choose the eliminations that we want to roll out. We can choose the presentation currency, and we can even set it to automatically update the group companies should we want to do that. For today's purpose of a quick demo, I'm going to be using this Manchester Coffee Roasters account that's data is coming in from Excel. But again, under here, you can see I've got my other data sources into QuickBooks, Xero, Excel, and actually sort on name and the source data. So I can sort on that, and I can also filter on that. So if I'm looking just for my Xero companies, I can do that here as well, or maybe just my Excel, take off my Xeros. There's lots of ways in which we can get to sort and search for companies, but in this case, I just want to use Manchester Coffee Roasters. As you can see here, we've got analysis, reports, and forecasting. I can see that this was last updated on the 8th of May, and we can see it was last accessed 44 minutes ago. A couple of options I have here in settings. So once you import your client, you're brought into this screen. So this will allow you to confirm your data import, the periods that you're importing, the source of the data, and also just a very quick point here. If you are bringing in data from Xero or QBO, you do have an option here to tick a little box to say automatically update overnight. Therefore, any data refreshes will happen overnight for you. So they'll be sitting in Fathom tomorrow. So you're always looking at the most up-to-date data. However, should you wish to make or post a transaction into Xero or QBO and you want to see that reflected in Fathom straight away, all you hit is this little grey button here. It will be saying update from your source data, be that Xero or QBO, and you can do that straight away. If you have budgets sitting in Xero or QBO, you can import those as well. Xero will allow you to, will certainly allow you, as Andy mentioned at the top of the hour, you know, talking about Xero, if you want to bring in budgets at the high level, you can, and also you can bring in tracking category budgets as well. And whilst I mentioned tracking categories, you can even import data from those tracking categories in Xero, also from the data upload as well. You can create non-financial data. So again, once we set the KPIs up, we can then export that into an Excel spreadsheet so that we can update that information. So it doesn't matter whether that's your website traffic, your numbers of sales orders, your number of customers, your number of employees. We can start measuring and managing those KPIs that people want to measure. I'm just going to skip through to chart of accounts, because this again was something that Richard mentioned in terms of presentation of the accounts information. Whilst we are pulling the data through, we're not posting anything back to the source ledgers. So if we want to group accounts under new headings, we can create new subheadings if we so wish. We can also reclassify accounts if we need to. So if something has been misclassified and we need to pop that, for example, into other income as opposed to revenue, we can do so very, very easily here. And we can do that for the P&L and the balance sheet. This also drives the summary and the detailed reports when we come to look at them. In terms of KPIs, I'm just diving in here because, again, we can set up as many KPIs in Fathom as we want, and this was something that Richard was talking about again at the beginning. We can only show a maximum of 60. There are debates around whether 60 KPIs is too many, but again, this will depend on your client. You don't have to show all of them. You can if you so wish, and you can see I've got some here that are grayed out. If I wish to include them, I simply tick the box and I can set the importance or the criticality of that KPI within Fathom, and then we can move on to setting some targets. How do we add KPIs to the system? Well, you heard me mention a moment ago things like number of customers, number of employees. What we need to do is make sure that they're set up in here as a KPI. So, for example, if I want to track number of employees, I can do so within Fathom. I can say whether it's a number, it's currency, it's a percentage. You can see I'm already using that one. I can say whether the aggregation is summative, average, or a balance, whether a higher result is favorable, and I can even categorize it in my list so I know where it's always going to be. I can also create this in the library if I'm using this across multiple companies at the same time, so I don't have to reinvent the wheel. And the other thing is if I'm consolidating data, this gives me an ability to benchmark or consolidate because it's now sitting in my library. The other thing to think about with this is how we create non-financial KPI formulas. So, for example, if I wanted to look at revenue per employee, now what I can do is I can actually go in to step 2 here, and I can say choose from a list of options, divide my revenue by my number of employees, and there I've got my revenue per employee. You can become quite technical with that. Again, you can use parentheses. There's a list of certain operators that you can use within those formula. You can build them out. You can also create targets in here as well. Now, again, if you've imported a budget, where we've got data, we can actually use the budgets to drive the targets as well. But where we don't have a budget, we can use either the same targets every month or variable targets. And again, we use those on a grid. So, for example, if I wanted to say revenue per employee is £10,000 a month, I can use this green button and apply that across every month going forward for the financial range that I want. So it's very easy to add your own KPIs in for measurement. And if I just go back to settings, the final stage here is alerts. Now, these are really thresholds that you can set for clients that will tell you where revenue is less than the threshold, where gross profit margins are less than thresholds, etc. We can turn them on or off, adjust them accordingly, and save them. And the final piece here is to go into analysis. And then this is what I was talking about at the beginning, the ability to drive in very quickly and see this information either by month, quarter, or year. And I can change the relevant periods here as well if I need to. And I can also change the view of the KPIs to those that are on track, those that are off track, or any KPIs with alerts because they haven't met that threshold. And I can also allow them to change that view to last month, to the same month last year, or I can change that to importance. Again, just changing the view here. So your clients can have access to this. They're not going to break anything. They're not going to mess anything up. They can even jump in very quickly, get a very quick profit and loss. And again, this is what drives from the chart of accounts that level of expanded detail that we have sitting in there. So they don't have to wait for a report to be produced. They can just come in here and take a look. We are also allowing them to see their cash position, how cash is moving in and out of the business. And we also have a feature here called Goal Seek. Now, this isn't exhaustive, but again, it just allows them to start asking, or you to, on their behalf, to start asking questions around how do we increase our gross profit, from what to what, you know, that whole gap scenario, and what are some of the levers we can pull to achieve that. So if we wanted a 4% price increase, for example, it may not get us all the way to our goal, but we can certainly see that that would have an impact. Maybe that solidifies some of our thinking. But as we said, we want to focus on forecasting. So let's take a look. The first time you use forecasting within Fathom, you will see this screen. Now it says, let's get started. There are 3 ways in which you can build your forecast. The first way is to use the link to the existing budget. So if you have brought the budget in from Xero QBO, I can do that, and that will give me my baseline forecast to start from. The other option is a custom forecast, where I can go in and choose 3 or 4 simple steps, line by line, and build out my forecast. Actually, most people that come to Fathom are using the quick start. It is what it says on the tin. We can click on get started, and in about 4 seconds, I'm going to have a baseline forecast built for me. Now, it is using some smarts within the product. When you first go into an area, you'll notice that a little modal pops up on the left-hand side, giving you a whole raft of tutorial videos that you can watch. You don't have to, but they are there for you, and you can access them at any time simply by going to the education icon on the left-hand side. What you can see here is the main forecast grid. Just very quickly navigating this, we have the P&L, we have balance sheet, we have the cash flow. This is driven from the 2 here. And then we have drivers. Drivers are a way that which you can create formula to drive the forecast forward. Is exactly what you say in the tin. And you can upload 500 drivers from Excel if you want to do it. I've seen people, for example, use the price per therm of energy to calculate their energy usage. I've seen people use various costs of sales splits to drive that as well. But you know your clients, there's a whole raft of ways in which we can use it. Fathom's forecast is designed to be a rolling monthly forecast. We need at least 2 months worth of data to drive this. And we've also built, as I said at the beginning, some smarts into the product as well. So we are in the current month, which is why this is slightly grayed out. But if I go into July and click on the cell here, there's a couple of ways in which we can get data in here or tell Fathom how to process the forecast. The first way is we can direct entry. Just double click into that cell. You can now see I can direct type into that cell the number that I want. But on the right hand side, it's also opened up a modal, a little window that says, here we have 2 options. You've got what we call rules, and then underneath that is what we call timing profiles. So when is cash being collected against that? Now we're using the indirect method of forecasting. We're not using direct method. We're not looking at individual invoice payment terms. But to give you an idea of the power of rules and timing profiles, we'll just dive in here now. Keep the questions coming. I will finish shortly when we'll look at some of the questions, so I'm sure there's some there. What we can do is if I go to smart prediction, and I'm just going to use this rule. So you can see here it's using a smart prediction including seasonal adjustments and linear regression. So if I click on this and click Edit Raw, you can see it's looking back, because it will allow you to look back over the last 2 years worth of data, 24 months, and include any seasonal adjustments. But I don't have to use Smart Prediction. I can link it to a previous period. I can create a constant growing rule. So if I wanted to say this was £50,000 a month, I could just simply apply that. Or I could use a formula or driver. And in my case, being a coffee roaster, I could have various sizes of bags of coffee times the price. You get the idea of how I can use drivers to push that out. And then I can link back to my budget if I want to. But whatever I choose, I apply that change, it confirms that change, and then those numbers spin up accordingly. And what you should have seen was the numbers almost look like a departure board at an old-time train station. Those numbers really spin up in front of you. But how do we allocate the cash? Well, what we can do here is I can edit this raw here, and I can say that currently it's being monthly. I've got 100% coming in the same month. I'm just going to add another month here and say, actually, that's 80%, not there. We're only getting 10% in the same month, and I'm going to add another 10% here, adding up to 100, and that will adjust my cash timing profile of when that cash is actually coming in, and I can see it. That's as simplistic as it gets. There are other things we can do around schedules, depreciation, journals, etc. on the balance sheet. We can go into that in a much more deeper dive with you shortly. But what about scenario planning and forecast? So the way that Fathom has done this is a little bit different. One is that we want to present information from forecasts that people understand. And the way we do that is through quick metrics. Now, these are 5 metrics that you or the client can add if you give them access to do this. And it's what's important for them. So they could, for example, look at gross profit margin and say, actually, I need 56% gross profit margin, add that metric, and I can see immediately where my forecast is stressing those areas, either by numbers or by graph. So if I change my specialty coffee here to 100,000, I can see the impact that that will have. And that moves. And I can change back to my grid here. Clients love seeing this because they get a feel for the decisions that they're making, how they're making it, and the impact this is having. The other element we have is we have what we call micro forecasts. So micro forecasts are, I want you to think of these as events. Your clients will be thinking of new premises, new product lines, new locations, new staff, new hires, new assets, new vehicles, new loans. These are events that can be overlaid on top of your baseline forecast. So let's create an example. So here, let's say, for example, I'm going to hire a new CEO. So we just say new CEO. I'm going to create a category to group all of these together. And I'm going to say HR. So I'm going to add HR as a grouping, a category, and I'm going to start this person in June. By doing that, we now go into a little wizard that allows us to look at the 3 most commonly used items. So, what do they most do as a business? They add loans, they hire employees, or they purchase assets. So I'm going to add an employee here. I'm going to say that it's permanent, but it could be temporary. And I'm going to say this person is on £200,000 a year, and it's going to be salaries and wages. Oops, 2 seconds. Pop that through, and I'm going to add that to my micro forecast. Now, what I can also do here is if this person's going to be revenue generating, or there's going to be other assets or other elements happening, I can add those accounts in here. So again, I can fully build out my little forecast in this sense to this event happening. The power of this really comes when, and we know this happens, boards change their mind, your clients will change their mind around what their plans are. I don't have to delete that. I can simply turn it off and my forecast will reset back to where it was at the baseline. We know that, again, sometimes clients can change their mind multiple times. So if they want to bring it back in, I haven't got to recreate it. I can just immediately bring it back into my forecast and see the impact. If I go back to my main grid, I can even scroll down and see where that's having an impact, because it will tell me, because it's linked here and it shows me my new CEO. So we've now linked a micro forecast to our main grid, but what about a scenario? What's our best case scenario? So let's go and now create scenarios. We can choose to apply any or all of the micro forecasts that we've created to this scenario. So let's say we want to case a best case scenario. I'm going to apply my micro forecast, but I'm also going to add a configuration here that says, let's look at a percentage or a value increase or decrease in revenue or any of those items. So let's say, what happens if we get a 20% increase in revenue and a small decrease of 3% in cost of sales and 1% increase in expenses. And we can now create that scenario. I've now not only had my baseline, I've now got my best case scenario, including my micro forecast sitting here. If I want to work within that alone, I can do so. And again, I can flex this here. So if I come back to the top, I can start adding in new rules based on this scenario. I'm going to edit my existing rule. I'm going to say this is a smart prediction using the last 24 months, apply those changes to my best case scenario. There we are. And if I want to switch back at any time to my main grid, it's there. The power that this gives me is when I'm presenting this, I can embed this into my report for my client. So there's my forecast. Not only have I got my three-way forecast built in, but I'm also now able to show the options in a graph to my client of, here's your best case, here's your status quo, and here is your worst case scenario. And again, off the back of that, I can take a snapshot of that plan that we've just agreed and also include that in our report. Because the power that we see here through micro forecasts is, what happens if that changes or something delays? And again, I think, Matthew, you mentioned this, Trump can wave his pen and something huge changes. Well, what if those tariffs were to have an impact at the end of the year? Then we can drag that over and everything spins up. So all that work, we can see the impact of that decision or that event happening real time before it's happened. That's hugely powerful when you're presenting that to your clients. And having the ability to then link that agreement into your report using the templates that are available within Fathom. And again, everything is templated. So once you template it, it can actually be scheduled to be automatically produced to a draft report. So again, if you think about the data flow, clients doing the bookkeeping, you're following that up. The bookkeeping is going into zero. It's done. You're closing the books down 5th or 6th of the month. You want to produce a board pack on the 7th of the month. We can now set the template, produce that on the 7th of every month to a draft status, create that schedule. It's done. All we need to do is finesse our commentary into that report, and then we can submit that to the board and external stakeholders. So Fathom is really designed to speed up a lot of that information for you and the production of that. So hopefully through that, you've seen some of the power of Fathom. So I'm just going to see if there are any questions coming up. Looks like there's a fair few coming through into the chat, which is great. So I'll pick up on those. Andy, let's bring you back onto the stage. Matthew, bring you back onto the stage. We're coming around for about 10 minutes of Q&A now. Let me see. There was one at the beginning around Datev. Hopefully I've answered that one. We've got Other questions? Is there a plan to be able to add more than 50 micro forecasts, please? Yes, it is. And thank you very much for that, Rob. It is something we are looking at. We've seen the power of that. And we've certainly seen people asking for more micro forecasts. It may be that micro forecasts, or you could achieve it through a scenario and create it through a scenario rather than a micro forecast, but that may be down to the way you wish to present it to your client. But we are looking at expanding out more than 50 micro forecasts. The other thing that would be a useful addition is a SaaS subscription model. I currently have to use 12 monthly micro forecasts to do this. Okay, that's fine. I mean, one thing I would say, happy to pick that up with you specifically around the client that you've got. One thing I would say is that you do have access to our support team 24 hours a day, 5 days a week. So if there are ever any questions, within Fathom in the bottom right hand corner, there's a little icon that looks like a square with a smiley face. Hit that and you'll be taken straight to our support team, and they'll often respond to you within 7 minutes. So please don't feel that you're going to have to wait for events like this if you haven't already logged it with the support team.
Matthew, I think you actually had some experience of Fathom support, didn't you?
Yeah, indeed. When I initially took out a sort of a demo version to have a look at it and have a play, one of the Fathom team reached out and sort of gave me a one-to-one demonstration, which was sort of really powerful. When you get a piece of new software, you're never quite sure where you jump in or what it does or how it happens. So that was really good. And then moving on, if you do get stuck and you do have a question, then yeah, as Darren says, if you reach out to the support team, they do get back to you really, really quick. You know, sort of 10 minutes, and I've normally got an answer. So they are really good, which is better than a lot of software providers, that's for sure.
That's music to my ears to hear people say that. So no, thank you very much on that one. So we've got those SaaS subscription, 50 data. If you create a budget in Fathom, can it be pushed back to zero? You may have covered that. No, there's no pushback in of zero. You can export the budget into an Excel format, but there's no pushback into zero yet. Just go through and see if there are any other questions.
There's quite a few in the chat as well, Darren, coming through.
Yeah, I've just seen those. I'm just going through. Micro forecast, not crazy about the name. That's marketing for you, I have to say. But the feature is great. Thanks, Thorsten. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. How would we have changed the NI percentage just as the threshold at the same time to show the impact of the business? NI percentages, there's a tax settings in the forecast. So that's where you put your NI and PAYE thresholds in there. If you're doing employees, that's for David Gilbert. Is there a training matrix online so you can get up to speed quickly to maximize? Absolutely. As Matthew said, you can start with a 14-day trial if you haven't used Fathom previously. What we would do is say max it out. It's unrestricted, so you can put as many clients on there as you want. We don't restrict people by the number of users. I'll come on to that towards the end though, because there is something that may be of interest to you. There is self-guided. If you take a subscription, one of our team will reach out, as they did with Matthew, and they will offer you a guided call to onboard you. Beyond that, there are self-paced resources that I pointed out within the product, like the training. Again, some people just prefer self-paced training themselves. That's absolutely fine. We will always reach out and offer you a call to jump on with a product specialist. So please use that. If you want to go crazy beyond that, under the question mark icon in the top screen, there is actually something called certification. I'm not sure whether Matthew or Richard have even touched on that yet, but that is 6.5 hours of CPD accredited training that goes through literally every aspect of Fathom. I can see Matthew pulling a delightful face at the thought of doing 6.5 hours of CPD, but it is there if you so wish to do it. There's a lot, and again, it is self-paced, so you can do it at your own time, not necessarily where you're going to a tea room in Harrogate, but I would advocate that. How does the project forecasting work with lumpy project-based revenues? I think that's an interesting question. It would depend on how lumpy and project-based work it is. I would certainly reach out to one of our project specialists and build from that. Chris, I think you asked the question, can I build a headcount budget or individual at head level? If you are doing that, remember you are restricted to the 50 micro forecast. So it's less than 50, yes. If it's more than 50, no. You'd have to do that at a much more higher aggregated level. Do you integrate for HubSpot or CRM for including pipeline forecasts? No, but you can export that information into Excel, and you could import that into Fathom as a non-financial KPI. That's come from Richard Hughes. And you can also build not just charts, but you can build KPI tables as well using the data that you're bringing in. So yes, you can do that. Please do contact me as the support team advise me down the micro forecast route. Rob, I've got a log of your question. I will reach out to you regarding that. And again, Rob, thank you very much for your advocacy around our support team as well. Any other questions?
That's been a great bunch. Thank you all for those. I've got a quick one, Darren, which is only just out of personal interest, really. Why does so much financial software come out of Australia and New Zealand?
I think there are different theories on this. I think one is solving problems very quickly. Certainly with Xero, they saw opportunities. They became great tech hubs and a great place to recruit tech people, and it gave them a great lifestyle in the Southern Hemisphere. So from that, they looked at a lot of the problems. And I think, we saw a huge amount of that where they rethought the processes that accountants and business owners went through when looking at things like bank reconciliation. Nobody liked doing bank reconciliation, so they rethought it. I think having worked for a number of companies that have come out of Australia and New Zealand, they just like to get stuff done. And if there's ways in which they can fix it, they'll find ways to fix it. And that's not just in the tech sector. I think that's in the whole way that their government processes. We're still battering down with MTD. They've had the ATO for a number of years, the Australian Tax Office. They've had their collections being done. It's a lot more simpler, albeit I am saying this tongue-in-cheek because every limited company in Australia has a 30th of June year end. It's not like we have over here, so it's a lot more simplified for them in certain areas. But again, I think they just take that approach of, if it's broke, let's see if we can fix it and do better.
Yeah, just getting stuff done quickly is a good answer, really. Also true in Yorkshire, by the way. There's a couple more quick questions popped through on the chat for you, Darren.
Yes.
A cheeky one from Mark, but we don't mind.
How long is a free trial period, and are you able to offer us an extended period? Mark, we are the standard trial period is 14 days. If we need to extend that slightly, again, let the person know when they reach out to you and offer you the onboarding call. Let them know, and we can extend it slightly for you. That's not a problem. Excuse me. When I tried Fathom 18 months ago, I struggled with the balance sheet. Are you able to demonstrate how it handles payroll taxes in the balance sheet and cash flow, please? Maria, absolutely. Happy to set up a specific, that sounds like a very specific question for you that you were coming up with. I'd be more than happy to get one of the team to go through that with you in a little bit more detail. If you would be open to a session with us on that one, please let me know. Can it do daily cash flow forecasting? Ian, great question. No, the limitations that we have at the moment within the product are monthly, quarterly, or annually. There's no daily cash flow forecasting in that. If you're looking at that level of forecasting, I would probably look at something like Float as well, because that's a nice tool that does that. And it does allow you to look at scenarios as well if you need daily forecasting. But part of me kind of figures that may be showing some other issues or some concerns within the business as well if they're looking at daily forecasting. Yeah,
Float, when we did the poll on various bits of software, Darren, Float did get quite a few thumbs up from other CFOs in the team, actually. So that may well be worth looking at for that level of detail.
Yeah, I think one thing I've certainly seen is post-pandemic is more and more businesses really hyper-focusing on budgeting, planning, and forecasting. more so than ever. Now, I think what that demonstrated was that an event can happen out of the blue that completely turns everything upside down that no one had planned for. We saw very similar things happen with, and I said this to Matthew and to Richard on the call the other day when we were planning this webinar. We saw what had happened when a boat got stuck in the Suez Canal and it impacted everyone's supply chain for the months that it had. We're now seeing the impact of what happens when someone strikes a pen as a budget and national insurance contributions go up. People are looking to sell businesses because they want to avoid CGT, and now people are staring down the barrel of an energy price rise in April and another one potentially in July. So your clients, these are the issues that are keeping your clients awake at night. And now we've seen so many more people say, I need to think more strategically about my business. What if scenarios most certainly have gone up. Yeah, so I think this is a key time for us.
Yeah.
That's a great question, Helen. And yeah, how does Fathom differentiate from other reporting software in the market, Spotlight, Sift? I would say, the fact that I'm going to be biased. I think we're a better looking software product. I think we're easier to use. And I think the strength of our product comes also from the support that we provide and domain experience that we have with working with CFOs and accountants, as mentioned by Matthew and a few others. I think you need to ask that question of people like Matthew and others as to why they chose Fathom over those other products. But I'm always going to be biased on that. And hopefully we convince you that we are too.
Darren, we'll probably wrap up in a second, just because we do like to finish on time, and I'm notoriously for not finishing on time. I think you've got another slide for the people before I close off formally.
I do. I'm just going to add this back. So obviously we're very pleased to be asked to come and speak to you all. We'd love to kick things off in the right way. So if there is anyone that wants to take out a free trial, you can scan the QR code there. That will take you to our trial sign up page. All you'll simply need to do is pop your details in, your name, your email address, the company, your telephone number. But what I would also recommend is in the bottom there, you'll see there's a referral code. If you type in CFO Centre 20 in capital letters, that will unlock a 20% discount for 12 months should you wish to subscribe. This will also apply for clients that you wish to try the software on. We appreciate that you may not necessarily want to own the subscription, but you want to use this for your clients, and ultimately they will end up paying for it. This is our way of saying if they're a client of yours, they can get a 20% discount for 12 months. But obviously, if you want to own the subscription, then there are plans that will scale with you if you want to own that subscription. But if you want to just subscribe on behalf of your clients, each time you take out a trial for those clients, just pop that code in, and that will be available for you.
Fabulous. Well, look, let's draw to a close. I thought that was a great session, and actually what made a difference was actually hearing from somebody presenting that actually is a proper accountant, and actually how you dealt with those questions, Darren, as opposed to, I'll check with sales, was brilliant. So, and I think we'll do more of these if there's a demand. There will be a recording, and I will send you a feedback form out, of course. And if there is a demand for more of these technical webinars generally, please let me know. Next week's session also touches on this area a little bit, so have a look at that as well, and I'll send a reminder about that shortly. So just remains to say, big thanks to Darren, Matthew and Richard. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for all the questions, and it won't be the last time we hear about Fathom, I suspect.
Hopefully not, but thanks for your time. Thanks, Richard. Thank you, Matthew, for joining us as well. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Have a great day. Take care.